Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, the House of Commons may vote on the replacement submarines within weeks, and by the numbers, the government are expected to win the day. But how will Labour vote? It is official Labour policy at the moment to support the government in this, but that's clearly not that straightforward. Jeremy Corbyn's leadership is throwing that policy into question, and Labour has historically had difficulties with backing nuclear weapons, as our political editor David Grossman reports.
Scramble, scramble.
They are the focus of evil in the modern world.
Over the past 7 decades of nuclear drama, in the background and sometimes in secret, it's often been the Labour Party building, updating and sustaining our nuclear weapons.
It's been pragmatic, and it needed to be. There have been times in recent history where Labour has adopted, for example, a unilateral disarmament policy, and the voters have told us what they think of that, rightly so. But I think for most of the period where we have had nuclear weapons, the Labour Party has supported the acquisition of that weapons programme. It's a defensive system. It's to protect our national security. We don't use it to threaten anyone. And to be willing, as the last Labour government was, actually under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, to make effective steps to make sure our nuclear weapons are the minimum we need to defend ourselves.
Well before Blair, it was Attlee's government who built the first British atom bomb. In 1964, Harold Wilson could have cancelled our first submarine system, Polaris, before it was built. He hinted he might, but in secret, he gave the go-ahead. And his successor as Labour leader, Jim Callaghan, fought the '79 election on a promise not to renew Polaris, but away from the gaze of the public and colleagues, he made secret preparations.
He commissioned studies, big secret study, of the options for replacing Polaris, on the grounds that whoever won the '79 election would have to take the decision. And on his last morning in number 10 Downing Street, and I've seen the document, he leaves written instructions for Mrs. Thatcher to be given the research and the R&D and the possibilities, the options papers, whole. Because there's a rule in Whitehall that you don't see the papers of previous administrations. But Jim said Mrs. Thatcher needs to see this. So Jim had to keep it away from full cabinet and even from his cabinet committee structure. And Michael Foot, his deputy in the cabinet, wasn't on that group.
Like Michael Foot, Jeremy Corbyn favours Britain giving up nuclear weapons. But the polls suggest voters don't agree consistently by about 2 or more to 1. This could present Jeremy Corbyn with 2 electoral problems.
Firstly, it's not a vote winner because nobody really votes based on Trident. And secondly, it plays into the hands of the Conservatives, who will simply use that to enforce the broader narrative that Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party cannot be trusted on our national security.
Peace to the world!
That trust may not have been helped by the Labour leader's recent suggestion that he might support the building of 4 replacement nuclear submarines to preserve jobs, but not arm them with nuclear weapons.
Man the bomb now!
It's also been suggested that Labour may give MPs a free vote when the issue comes before the Commons, possibly next month.
People are still entitled to ask of the Labour Party as the official opposition, well, what is your official position? What is your policy in relation to the retention of the nuclear deterrent? And I think we've got to have an answer to that question. We cannot say as a government, well, it's just down to individual conscience to decide whether we do or don't retain the weapon. We have to have a policy to be clear to the country about how we will defend this country against nuclear threats and nuclear blackmail. And so we have to have a position. There's no escape from that.
If Labour does change policy and oppose Trident's replacement, the party's challenge is to build on the enthusiasm of party activists and members and sell unilateralism to voters.
David Grossman. Well, joining me now is Emily Thornberry, Labour's Shadow Defence Secretary and the person leading Labour's review into the party's policy on Trident Renew. Good evening. Emily Thornberry, you are anti-Trident and you've addressed CND rallies. Why did Jeremy Corbyn bring you into the shadow cabinet and remove Maria Ego from the position who's pro-Trident?
You have to ask Jeremy that as to why he gave me the position instead. I am leading a review and I begin honestly saying that I'm sceptical about Trident. But everything is on the table, nothing has been taken off, and we're going to have an honest review and we're going to follow the evidence. So
you would say that you're simply sceptical, you're surely beyond sceptical, you've been committed anti-Trident campaigner.
I voted against Trident renewal in 2007. When my mother went to Greenham Common, I didn't go with her because at that stage I thought that I thought that nuclear weapons were necessary. I was frightened by the Russians. I think that things may well have moved on. But the review is about what will be the 21st century threats to Britain and how do we keep Britain safe. And we need to be able to ask honest questions and we need to be able to do a proper review. Of course it will be about Trident, but it will be about all the threats.
So this review will not be available and ready in time for example, a vote next month. There'll be some kind of interim report.
Yeah. I mean, I launched the review within a few days of getting the post. I've only been in the post a month. It is Labour Party policy to have a review, and we're having a review.
So, if the vote takes place next month, presumably Labour will vote with the government.
I think that that's a decision we yet have to make. The government, we don't know what it is that the government actually wants us to vote on. They talk about it being a main gate decision. They talk about it being the point of no return. But the Strategic Defence Review produced by this government has said they're not going to have a main gate decision. So actually they may be asking for another vote in principle, which is the same thing as we did in 2007. I think that they are just trying to kick the can down the road.
Now, if it is a main gate vote,
it's not going to be a main gate vote.
You don't know that for sure.
No, they say in the Strategic Defence Review it won't be a main gate vote.
But if it was a main gate vote, and it could still be a main gate, you would have to vote for because you are for replacing Vanguard submarines. So if it's a straight submarine vote, you'll vote for it.
No, our policy is to have a review at this stage, and it will not be. We need to get this straight. They have said that they're not going to have a main gate vote. They have said it's too complicated. They said that they want to have a vote in principle. No, really, and that they want to set up this arm's length body, which presumably will need primary legislation. They are playing games with you, Kirsty. It's important that we understand this.
You do want the 4 new subs.
We are looking at what the best thing for us to be doing in terms of making Britain safe.
So what options are you considering?
We're considering all the options. We are also looking at the wide range of other threats to this country, such as what is the best way to respond to terrorism, what about failed states, what about cyber attacks? There are many, many different things. And also, are we spending money in the right way when it comes to conventional forces? You know, for example, we have 6 destroyers at the moment, and the electrics keep going on them. So we can put a destroyer in a dangerous place and it can stop going.
But the fundamental big decision for you will be whether or not you support the Trident programme or not. Can you conceive of the outcome of a review which says that you support replacement subs for Trident, keeping Trident? Can you actually, in your conscience, think that that would be an outcome of this? Because the Labour Party is entirely split on this.
I can tell you honestly that this review is being done in an open way. It is to be done whereby we look at all the evidence and we follow the evidence. It is really important that we have a proper debate in this country and within the Labour Party to look at this really important decision.
Are you seriously suggesting that there could be one option, which I gather that Jeremy Corbyn has floated, that you would actually have these submarines without the warheads?
There are a number of possibilities.
But do you think that's a goer?
I'm not going to start, talking about hypotheticals at the moment. The review has only been going for a few weeks. It will take as long as it takes. It may be that it will be helpful to the Labour Party for me to be able to do an interim report at the beginning of the summer, which will then feed into Labour Party policy making, which will be Labour Party conference in the autumn.
Would you be disappointed if it was renewed? And about your own personal position, how could you be Shadow Defence Secretary standing up in support of Trident if you personally disagree with it?
I am going to look at the evidence and we will make a decision collectively on the evidence.
I wonder why that you're shying away from saying this, because you've been absolutely adamant in the past that you're anti-Trident. Now you're supposedly free in the party to discuss this, and yet following your conscience, you could stand there as Shadow Defence Secretary, possibly at the end of this review, and say Miraculously, Trident's right.
No, I'm a pragmatist. I've already said to you that in the 1980s I was in favour of nuclear deterrence, and since then in 2007 I voted against it because it seemed to me at that stage that it was out of date and it was a 20th century weapon, not necessary for the 21st century. But before we make a big decision like this, it is quite right for the opposition to be looking at all the evidence and asking difficult questions.
If you look at David Grosso, if you look at the polling, I can't see why Labour should tear itself apart in this, but it's not an issue. It's going to happen anyway if the government gets through it, and unless there's some kind of bolt from the blue. Why tear yourself? Why choose this subject? Is this the heart and soul? Is this ideology?
Do you really think that it is appropriate for the opposition to just wave through a decision of £41 billion at a time when we don't have enough aircraft to be able to be patrolling our shores? We can see nuclear submarines off the coast of Scotland and we don't have the aircraft to follow them. We have to rely on others. We are making really serious decisions about conventional forces, and we are not looking at whether or not this replacement is the appropriate platform for the 21st century in order to make us safe. People talk about it being an insurance policy. The difficulty is, if you talk about it as an insurance policy, you can get caught in thinking that this is all we need. And in the 21st century, there are certainly some very big threats out there, and we need to make sure we are taking them seriously and making the appropriate decisions.
Emily Thornby,
to defend
thank you very
ourselves.
much indeed.